Hello everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Gaming in the Wild, a video games podcast about games from the artistic, creative side of the tracks, from indie to AAA. My name's John, I'm your host, and this week in Reykjavik, I'm actually going to cover a game that I finished a few weeks ago, and I've been wanting to get it onto the show, but there just doesn't seem to have been a good moment for it. It's a game that I was really into when it first came out, had a great time with, and then I took a long pause in playing it, which meant that a couple months slid by, and it wasn't a new game anymore, and there were other games that were, like Inscription and Jet and all the games that I've covered recently, so this one fell by the wayside. But a couple of people have been asking about it on the show's Discord server and thinking about buying it and wondering what my thoughts are, and I thought, okay, maybe it's time to talk about this one. So this episode will be about Kena Bridge of Spirits, a PS5 exclusive by a first-time developer, kind of a double-A title, with some quite nice music, as you can hear right now. So I'll be talking about that one as the featured game of the episode. But before I get to that one, I will run through a couple other things I've been playing. It's actually been a lively week for me in terms of what I've been playing. I started 3 games and I finished 3 games. I'm actually starting to get into that end of year mood now that we're sliding into November, where I kind of want to polish off games that I've left hanging out there. I kind of want to sweep up some games that other people have said really hit them this year. Some of other people that I respect and whose opinions I respect have got on really well with, and I want to try them myself and see what all the fuss is about. So it was in that spirit that I started playing The Forgotten City this week. It's that game that began as a Skyrim mod, and it does bear the hallmarks of that history for sure, but is actually a very well written, very interesting mystery story. It's a time loop game in which you go back to a fantastical underground Roman city, and there are only 23 people that live there, and they have something called the Golden Rule, which means that if one person commits a crime in this fantasy city, then everyone in that community will turn to gold, and the city is kind of littered with statues of previous occupants when this cycle has happened before. I've enjoyed that it has some Outer Wilds style detective mechanics, so you get a lot of tasks and points of interest that you can go and investigate, and they get ticked off and strung together. So you're led through this mystery, and it is enjoyable going through it. But I felt a little disinterested in the central mystery of the game so far. But I am enjoying the smart writing, and that it touches on classical philosophy a lot, the kind of the moral conundrum of whether one life is worth the many, and moral equivocation and all of that kind of stuff. So it's an interesting one, and I am going to continue playing The Forgotten City. I'm playing it over on PS5, but I know that it came onto Game Pass last week, so there is a renewed interest in The Forgotten City. Might be a good moment to cover that one. I've also been playing a bit of Boomerang X as part of my pre-end of year preparation. I've been looking at the output of some of my favourite publishers, such as Annapurna and Raw Fury, and Devolver Digital. And one game that sprang out from the Devolver lineup that I haven't played this year is Boomerang X. I've heard about it from a few other people. I've heard that it's good. So this one is a first-person boomerang shooter, I guess. It's a very slick, tight, fast-paced game. And you go through a couple of corridors, you get a little bit of story, but the game is really hinged around combat arenas in which you have to fight waves using your boomerang. And this boomerang can slingshot you up into the air. It can take out multiple targets with one throw. And as you progress, you get a new ability every round. So this boomerang just very gradually becomes like a super weapon. It's very fast, very fun. I think fans of Dishonored or Mirror's Edge will feel immediately at home here. For me, it's also been a little stressful. It's combat arena games where you have waves and waves of baddies coming at you, and you have to be very quick, think on your feet, and super fast action games. A little bit stressful to me, but I've been trying to get into that flow state and get into this game. I'm enjoying it. It looks good. The gameplay is very tight. It's simple. and I admire those things about it. So I've been playing a bit of Boomerang X. And I also finally started Stardew Valley, which I think must be one of the most popular games around. Everyone seems to just have so much love for this game on social media, and everyone seems to have stories about it. So I picked it up on iOS. I thought, very much like Slay the Spire, it might be the kind of game that I'll pull out of my pocket if I'm in a waiting room, on a bus, or just want something to play in bed before sleep. Stardew seems like it could be that kind of game. And Slay the Spire, I've kind of maxed out on my love of Slay the Spire now, after over 100 hours of playing it. So Stardew is a much different game, obviously. It's a very, very charming, mellow farming game with pixel art and jaunty music. And you just get seeds. You've inherited a farm, and you get seeds from the village. You plant them, you water them, you explore. There's things to do. You can fish, you can talk to people, you can carry out quests. And it's a very cozy, wholesome game. And I've been enjoying it to a degree, but even after, I would say, the 5 hours that I've played or so, and that's been in very short bursts of half an hour here and there, I'm starting to feel the grind of it a little bit, because it is a farming game, and so you are growing and selling and planting and growing and selling and planting in order to get more resources to build, bigger fields or whatever, smelters, to get better tools, and everything that you're doing is incrementally inching you forward towards having a bigger farm, and to doing better, being able to improve your house, being able to improve your relationships with people and your standing in the community. And so Stardew is very charming, but I am already feeling a little bit of grind. Like, I opened it the other day, and I thought, what was I doing again? I was trying to build a smelter. So how do I do that? And then I had to go and look for the recipe for a smelter, and look at the 3 different ingredients that I needed. And then I had to think, okay, now where do I find these ingredients again? I think one of them was clay or copper ore. And I was thinking, I don't even remember where I got copper ore or clay. And then by the time I'd been through this kind of 5-minute process of figuring out what I was doing and how to get there, I felt a little exhausted, and I just kind of closed it again. So I think Stardew is perhaps going to take a little bit of attention span that I don't quite have for it right now. But I am feeling optimistic that the fact that it's on my phone is really helpful. I think it is the kind of thing that I'll open for 20 minutes before sleep, and hopefully I will get into it. I want to get into Stardew in the way that so many other people that I know have. So let's hope that happens. And then there are also 3 games that I finished this week. One of them is Psychonauts 2, which I have mentioned on the show before. It's a great game. It's very well put together. It's very imaginative. The story is great. The writing is great. And most of the gameplay is good. For me, it went on a little long, and I tailed off in interest towards the end. And I felt like I was really kind of forcing myself over the finish line with this one, unfortunately. But I will give Psychonauts 2 a full review. I think it is deserving of a full review. So I will be talking about that one on a future episode. The second one was Lost in Random, that game by the makers of Faya, and a couple of other interesting games, Zoink Studio. And this was kind of a fun one. It's a very gothic, Tim Burton-y Nightmare Before Christmas game, where you move through 6 different worlds that are all named after one side of the dice. So like One Town and Tuville, Threeton, and that sort of thing. And you battle using a mixture of dice rolls and cards in a deck that you've built, but it's also real-time combat. So you freeze time, roll the dice, and then pick the cards that you're going to have to use in the next bout, the next section of real-time battle. It's kind of hard to explain, but simple to understand if you see it in motion. But it's mostly, I would say, a game that draws on the kind of the feel and the aesthetic of deck builders without using any of the real mechanics. So it's a third-person, gothic, Tim Burton-y adventure game that has some of the trappings of dice and cards, some tabletop games and so forth. So if that sounds like something for you, I mean, I had a good time with it. It's not by any means a home run of a game, but it was a good one. And I think I will give that one a full review at some point too. And the final game that I finished this week, it's actually one that I raced through a little bit, because it's Eastshade. I think it came out in 2019, and it's a very mellow walking game where you walk around a beautiful island, a natural island with trees and little medieval towns. It's kind of small, but it feels big while you're playing it. It feels like a decent size for this game. It's an indie game. And this island is populated by animal people that are like owls and bears, but they wear clothes and do human jobs. And you're a painter, and you've been shipwrecked on this island, and you go around painting the sights of the island, like the view from the highest mountain, the view from the tallest tower, the rugged coastline, and all of these different kind of painting challenges that you have in the game. You also meet a lot of very interesting people, and you do tasks for them. It's nicely written. Again, it's a little Skyrim-y, a little bit like The Forgotten City, and it has a lot of Skyrim jank in it as well. Like there are sheep that are just kind of walking against walls, and birds that are frozen in the air, and people that are just kind of vibrating on the spot strangely. So it's a little Skyrim-y, but it was very mellow and very lovely, a combat-free game with a day-night cycle, lots of sunsets and pink skies, a moon and a big sun in the sky. So there's like an eclipse every night that you can see. There are some timing-based puzzles. You have to be somewhere at a certain time of the moon and so forth. And there are lots of secrets to find, and there's quite a lot on it. And I actually got through Eastshade and finished every single mission that I discovered, which is quite rare for me, but I kind of wanted to enjoy my time in Eastshade to the maximum, but also to finish it before it left Game Pass, which it does at midnight tonight as I'm recording this. And I just finished this one now. I think I will also do a full episode on Eastshade. I guess it will be gone from Game Pass by the time you hear this episode, but it might still be available at that post-Game Pass price that they do. When games leave Game Pass, they're on sale for a little while, in case you haven't finished it and you want to buy it and download it. So if you're interested in Eastshade, I'll be reviewing that one too. So before I move on and talk about the featured game of the episode, Kena Bridge of Spirits, I will briefly mention that this show is patron-supported. There is a Discord for the show, and at patreon.com/gaminginthewild, you can support this show for $1, €1, or £1 a month, or more if you want. You'll get access to the Discord community, which has been really fun, actually. It's been really lively in there. People are always recommending games to each other, pointing out games that are on sale, talking about current gaming news, and just whatever's going on in life generally. It's a really fun little community. You'll also get a couple of extra episodes a year from me. You'll get occasional sale recommendations from me as well, and some written reviews too. So I try and make a really nice deal for my patrons, and I'm really appreciative of anyone that supports the podcast. It's patreon.com/gaminginthewild if that's of interest to you. Thanks to all my existing patrons, and thanks to you if you're thinking about it. And with all of that said, let's move on and talk about the featured game of the episode, Kena Bridge of Spirits. So Kena Bridge of Spirits is a 2021 game. It is by Ember Labs, a first-time developer, and it was a PlayStation console exclusive that is also available on PC. It was announced in one of the pre-PS5 console launch hype events, so it was one of those state of plays when Sony was bigging up what PS5 could do. I think it's also on PS4, but it feels very good on PS5. It's 60 frames a second in 4K. It's very beautiful. It feels like it belongs on next gen. So whilst it is one of those games that is cross-gen theoretically, it feels very at home on the PS5. I think that those technical specs really do it some favours and really help the experience. So Ember Labs is a first-time studio made up of animated filmmakers and VFX people who are taking a swing at video games. And the game was actually, despite that initial bump from the State of Play event, it was a little underhyped when it came out. It had kind of muted promo from Sony themselves, and lots of journalists that I follow, such as the Easy Allies and Skill Up on YouTube, they had to buy their own copies, which is kind of unheard of. So it seems like something a bit weird went on behind the scenes with the promo on this one. I'm not sure if it was teething pains from a first-time studio or if they were trying something strategic with the press. But it came out just today, actually, that the game has recouped, that it's been a success for Ember Labs, and that they will be moving on to their second game. So whatever that was, it didn't hurt them too much. It currently has an 80 on Metacritic on PlayStation, 83 on PC, and an 8.6 from the players, which is interesting. I'm always interested when there is when the players actually like something more than the critics, because it seems like kind of a rarity. It's a certain kind of game that the players rate more highly than critics, and I can kind of see that with this game. It does feel like a video game that a certain type of gamer is really going to lap up, that is perhaps not as ripe for critical praise as it is for gamer approval. How Long to Beat has it at 10 to 12 hours for the story and 18 hours for completionists. My time came in at about 15 hours. I got quite far into it, and then just before the final story arc began, where the game gets quite tough, I took a little break from it. I felt like I was a little burned out on it. I think I had binged quite a lot of it in just a couple of days, and I just dropped the game completely. You know, sometimes you're just done with something, but it was always on my mind I would come back and finish it, and so I did, and so I got it done in 15 hours in total. I'm glad that I saw it over the finish line. It always feels good to complete a game, especially one that's this length. It's not crazy demanding. It's not an Assassin's Creed game. Anything under 20 hours for me, between 10 and 20 hours is a really nice length for me. It's a nice comfortable length, something you can get done in a few weeks. And that also explains why this review is a little late. I had planned to get it done around release, but we're now a few months on. It was a summer game. So what is it, Kena Bridge of Spirits? Well, the developers describe it as this. Kena is a young spirit guide who travels to an abandoned village in search of a sacred mountain shrine. She struggles to uncover the secrets of this forgotten community hidden in an overgrown forest where wandering spirits are trapped. I find that kind of interesting, actually. It doesn't even mention gameplay, and the fact that this studio is formed out of a kind of Pixar-ish cinematic organisation, that makes sense. It's the kind of thing you could read on the back of a DVD box. I describe it as this. Kena Bridge of Spirits is a high-fantasy, third-person action-adventure in which a young spirit guide tries to free 3 lost souls, cleanse corrupted nature, and defeat the big bad. It's a decent game, and an unabashed pastiche. Think Horizon Fallen God of Souls. And that's one of the main takeaways that I have from this one, is who is this game for? And I think it might be for the Horizon Fallen God of Souls people, for AAA gamers who are looking for something between their games, for a smaller game that they can play while they're waiting for Horizon Forbidden West or whatever comes next from the EA Star Wars franchises, or for the next God of War Ragnarok, or for Elden Ring, or whatever it is. This game has the hallmarks of all of those games, and it has borrowed mechanics from a lot of those games, and a similar level of graphical finish, not quite as full-on Hollywood blockbuster as those games, but it's definitely aiming for that, just in a more Pixar-y style than those games, which do lean towards realism. So I do think that a certain type of gamer is going to love this game, and I think that's maybe why the Metacritic score is high with gamers. This is a down-to-earth, straight-up, generic video game piece, with some good things about it, some very, very familiar things about it, and I think for a certain type of gamer, this is going to be a real comfort food gaming experience. So the game begins when Kena arrives at a desolate village which has been wrecked. Everyone seems to be gone, and the village has been corrupted. So it's a quaint forest village, and you emerge from a cave and you walk down a mountainside and you encounter a couple of cute children who seem to vanish every time you approach. They laugh and they just vanish into nothing. And when you arrive at the village, it seems that this once beautiful village is very overgrown with this red globular corruption that we've seen in all kinds of games. We've seen it in Horizon Zero Dawn, for example. We're very used to the idea of clearing corruption, which is usually red and black, with magic that is usually blue. And this game very much leans on that. It's one of the central mechanics of the game. And in this village, everyone is gone, but you'll meet the village elder, a nice old guy. He's a spirit, and he tells you that there are lost souls dotted around the village, that something terrible has happened, but no one quite knows what it is. And so you head out on a mission from this hub world, which is the village, to find these spirits, to learn their stories, to free them, because you are a spirit guide who helps people over to the other side, and to piece together what happened here. And this storyline does tug pretty hard at the heartstrings. It's not so much, plucking at the heartstrings as just straight up grabbing them, which to me is always something that I'm a little allergic to. I don't like to feel like a story is really trying to manipulate me emotionally so much as lead me somewhere. And this one definitely comes on strong, let's say. But it does have a lot of moments of tenderness in it too. Kena has a nice facial expression. She's very understanding, calm, caring, kind of cipher of a character. And she does try and look after these lost souls, and she does try to show them kindness. So the game does have tenderness to it. And because it's about this urgent subject of regret and about death and about passing on, it's just a part of life that, it brings about a certain reaction. The developers know that very well, and so it feels a little manipulative to me, but it's also quite affecting. It's just in a very Pixar way, like it's going for the throat when it comes to the emotional stuff, makes no bones about it. But I will say also that something that you have to mention at the start of a review of this game is that it looks kind of beautiful. There is clear, beautiful water in the rivers and ponds. The trees sway, the plants blow in the wind. There are little statues everywhere. And Kena can do this charge move where you tap a button and she sends out like a little blue shockwave, and it illuminates things around her, like freezers on the walls will start to glow blue. The writing will glow, torches will light, it will lead you to collectible things, and it makes everything glow, so the world kind of responds to you, and that's a nice touch. It also has a lot of very frequent viewpoints, so even at this early stage when you've come out of the cave, the way that the light comes through the trees, the way that you can make torches light up, the way that everything is rendered and drawn, it's very pretty. I would say that it does feel next gen mostly in terms of performance. I think that 4K and 60 frames a second looks absolutely beautiful. The 60 frames a second just feels so nice. I'm kind of getting used to that now. I'm getting used to that gaming fidelity. It was never something that I was obsessed with previously. But when you play a next-gen game, or at least a game running on next-gen hardware, I would say this one is more the latter, you really do feel the difference. I think on PS4, games like Control really struggled to run, and games like The Last of Us 2 were sort of miracle games that somehow ran on last-gen hardware. Kena feels like it could run on a PS4 perfectly well, but it's very, very nice on a PS5. And if you do want something to play on your shiny PS5, which is gathering dust a little when it comes to exclusives right now, I think that's maybe why this game sold so fast, because people really needed a game like this, and it's a mid-price game as well. So I think I paid £30 for it. That's less than half the price of a Returnal or a Forbidden West, or a Miles Morales even. So it's a well-priced game that came out at the right moment, and it looks the part. The draw distance is wonderful. If you look across a valley and see trees going up a mountain, and on the top of that mountain you can see a house on a high peak, chances are you can go there, chances are you will go there. And you can see it from miles around. So the draw distances are beautiful. It really makes you feel like You can see this nice world. It's a little bit like that first Breath of the Wild vista that you see when you come out of the cave. This game offers you a lot of those viewpoints. So I really did admire the visual fidelity and the performance. The art style is a little nondescript. It's extremely Pixar. So you know what to expect. It looks like it could be on the cinema screen. It looks like it could be a kid's movie. And in fact, the cutscenes pretty much do look just like that. So there are regular cutscenes where Kena converses with people, gets information out of people and so forth. Always with this beautiful lighting and cinematography. It's a very nice looking game. It's a real pleasure to look at, and the music is good too. A nice production when it comes to the audio-visual side of things, for sure. So after this hub world, you head out on one of 3 routes, these linear routes, to lead you to where the spirits are to be found, and the real game begins. So as for the mechanics of this game, you explore, even though it's quite linear. I would say it's wide linear a lot of the time, although you'll see a lot of things that you're used to, like those sliding down things sections from Jedi Fallen Order, the marked ledges climbing from God of War and from Horizon Zero Dawn, and combat arenas where you are sealed into an area and you have to clear that area to progress. If you die, you're sent back to the start of it. You just have to power through them. So that's how it goes. There's puzzles in between, a little bit of exploration, a little bit of puzzle solving, secret finding. The puzzles tend to be picking up statues that are left lying around and putting them onto a base, or picking up a big rock and putting it somewhere so that you can climb up somewhere higher, and then you'll get into a combat arena and then repeat. And then when you finish, you find the spirit possibly a couple of times on each route, and you have little conversations and get to know who they are. And then there's a boss battle, and back to the hub you go. As for the movement, there is a jog and a run, a fast run. You can only climb on marked ledges, which feels dated and retro to me. It's one of my least favourite things after Breath of the Wild and Assassin's Creed Odyssey just showed us a new kind of freedom in games. Going back to that old, like, looking for a yellow ledge that you can jump and grab onto, feels kind of crappy to me. I'm not so into that now. There's also a bit of light platforming with a double jump. It's not a very satisfying one. A good first jump, but the second one feels like a little extra air rather than an actual strong second jump. You can usually climb onto a ledge or hang onto it and climb up. There is also swimming. It's pretty slow, only 1 speed, unfortunately. And then we have the combat. There is a light strike, a heavy strike, and a charged attack. You have a bow. If you jump into the air, you can do a slow motion moment, as we've seen in many other games. There are sticky bombs that you can throw onto enemies and then explode with an arrow. You can parry if you want to, and you probably will have to in this game. There is a dodge roll, a small backwards jump, and a dash, but the dash isn't very good for combat. For some reason, you have to hold down the parry button and then hit another button to dash, so it's very cumbersome. Not good for combat, only really good for these moments in the game where you have to pass through a kind of spirit barrier. And the combat is quite involved. I think it surprised a lot of people, just how challenging this game is. It has a very different speed to your average game of this type. I noticed it straight away in the first few battles. The enemies come for you. They actually really come for you. They come for you, they dart for you. They seem to have a more varied moveset than, say, the kind of silly, bumbling bokoblins from Breath of the Wild. They are more fierce than that. They come at you fast. They do things you don't expect. You have to be ready. You have to be watching. You can't spam an attack and just get through it, on the normal difficulty mode at least. So I think that it does have a bit more in common with the Dark Souls model of combat, which we've seen watered down in other games like Fallen Order. So I think it's more of a baby Dark Souls than a Breath of the Wild style combat, and so less accessible, but more involved, and requires more concentration. Not my favourite kind of combat personally, I will say. I like to just get through the game. I'm usually in it for the experience and the story rather than the challenge. But this game offers a pretty stiff challenge, especially in the bosses. The bosses are pretty cool. They all have different patterns. They are quite grand. Some of the later bosses are kind of ingenious. They have a lot going on. They really do. They have lots of tricks. They have these fake out moves where they have perhaps a swipe and then a swipe, and so you're used to dodging twice, but then sometimes they'll throw in a third one to catch you out, or pause and then throw in a third one to catch you out even more. If you're standing too close, they might quickly uppercut you or stamp on you, and if you're quite far away, they might do a very, very fast lunge or charge towards you in a kind of alarming way. So the combat is involved, it is challenging, and I think for players that like that kind of thing, there is something to be found here in this game that perhaps you wouldn't expect from the aesthetic. There are also a bunch of collectibles. The main one is these little creatures called the Rot, and these are little blobby Pikmin black ball pals, like little black blobs, like a lump of coal with a smiling little face on it and arms and legs. And you find these under rocks, you find them hidden away, you find them in chests sometimes, you find them in obscure places in the environment. Before long, you have a little crowd of these guys that follow you around like Pikmin, and they can do things for you. They can lift up blocks that are too heavy for you and carry them. They can open doors. They can turn into a cleansing force that helps you to clear away corruption. And later on, they have some combat utility too. And every time you find one, there's a little animation where it kind of comes out from under a rock and smiles at you and is all adorable and shit. They're a bit too sugary for me, a bit too Pixar-y for me. I'm not quite smitten by their adorable Pixar little blobby faces as I think the devs expected me to be. But if you are into that kind of cute, silly stuff, then you'll probably be into the Rot as well. You can even buy hats for them. It's all very cute and silly. But yeah, you find the Rot. There is a currency of sorts also. So you're finding currency in chests too. But you can only use it to buy hats for the Rot. So it smacks a little bit of Fallen Order's silly cosmetics. You know, in all of the chests in all of Fallen Order, you would only find like a different coloured sleeve for your lightsaber. And it was just dumb. I don't really like cosmetics as rewards in games. At least not the primary one. I love cosmetics in games. For example, in Sable, it does very well. You can change your outfit, express yourself through your outfit. But in this game, it felt like they didn't know what to put in the chests, basically. But they knew that they needed some collectibles. It's not a meaningful upgrade. It's just a silly hat for your Rot, which I think some people will probably find adorable and to fulfill the purpose of an upgrade, which is that you find something, basically. But it doesn't change the game in any way. There is also XP, which upgrades your levels. They don't feel meaningful, really. You hit a little harder, you have a little more health. You don't really notice that your level's going up, but there is a leveling system. Again, I would say mostly cosmetic as far as I could tell. There is a skill tree. I think there are 12 or 16 upgrades that you can get. Some of them are meaningful. For example, a hammer attack, where if you charge, you can get a kind of spirit hammer with an area effect. Striking down from the air whilst jumping, that's pretty handy. But then some of them are add-ons to this kind of thing. So it's like a slightly bigger hammer attack or a slightly bigger jumping strike, etc. It feels again like they felt like the game should have a skill tree, so they put one in, but it's mostly there to look the part. And that's something that I think is a running theme in this game. It feels like the designers have looked at every other game that is out there and they've tried to take all the bits that they think should be in a game. For example, ledgy climbing bits, puzzly bits, combat with a light and heavy strike and a charge attack, cute things, and a skill tree, and they've just kind of clunked it all together because that's roughly what a game looks like. And that's where me and Kana kind of part ways. I like lots of stuff about it. I like the graphics, I like the music. I think it's a very pretty game. And I'm glad that I played it. It was nice to play a pretty looking game on my PS5, and this one certainly did the job. It was very nice looking. The vistas were good. I loved the detail in like the tree roots, the sparkling water. When you're swimming, you can see the riverbed below you, the falling leaves, all of that sort of stuff. It has a logical progression to it. It has this comfort food feeling to it. And so there are things to like about it too. But as I was playing it, I got the strong feeling that this game was kind of empty calories, if you know what I mean. It is a pastiche of other games. It's very generic. It's very overfamiliar. It doesn't bring anything new to the table in either story or gameplay or presentation or mechanics. Everything has been seen before tens of times. And so there is really nothing new here, really. And it has very little gravitas too. I felt like the faux spirituality of it mixed with that Pixar-ish vibe. It feels just like a shallow game that tries to have an emotional effect on you anyway. Also, I mean, the difficulty in this game, I felt like the choices here were either that it should be normal mode is actually oddly hard and story mode is trivially easy. And so very much like a bunch of other games that I've played lately where I've ended up on a story mode that felt too easy because the normal mode felt too hard. This seems pretty common lately. I think that perhaps people should start thinking in terms of 5 difficulties rather than 3, of easy, normal, and hard. I think there has to be story, mild, normal, harder, and then hard. You know what I mean? I'm kind of really into this conversation lately of difficulty options. I'm into the conversation of difficulty as an accessibility issue. And I'm interested in the conversation of accessibility not being only about disabled people, but just accessibility being something that applies to people being different, people having different levels of experience, being of different age groups, of having different types of reaction speeds, of having different levels of experience. You know, if you've been hitting these games for the last 20 years, then you'll breeze through Kena. But if you've been hitting them for the last year, like me, and like a lot of people, then maybe you won't. And so I'm very much into the idea of tailoring difficulty to all different kinds of people in a meaningful, thoughtful way that allows them to enjoy the game in the way that they would like to enjoy the game. And Kena, it doesn't really do that. It makes a token effort and has these bespoke difficulty levels that are quite blunt. So there were a couple of other things that bugged me about this game. The animation on Kena herself, the running animation, it feels a little stiff and wrong. It's like a crap little bunny hop that she does when she's running. I mean, a running animation is something that you do have to look at throughout the whole game. And so it seems like the key animation of the whole game to some degree. I'm not sure what's going on with Kena's run here. There is also a few common problems with games of this type: floaty jumping, invisible walls, things that look like you should be able to explore them that turn out to just be scenery. The designated ledge climbing is a little tedious. There's also a couple of teething problems with puzzles. I got stuck a couple of times, and when I googled it, I saw that most players seemed to have been stuck. There's a puzzle where you come to an altar and 4 candles light in a certain sequence that tells you what to shoot, in which order. But the candles, I mean, I didn't even notice that there were candles, never mind what order they were in. I was looking at flags in the trees. I was looking at the way the branches stuck out from, flag poles and stuff like that. I didn't even notice there were candles. So when I googled it, I was really like, oh, really? How odd. So there were a couple of moments like that where the signification of what you're supposed to do is not quite full on. The language isn't fully developed there. So there we go. That's Kena Bridge of Spirits. I feel like I've just taken a giant dump on this game. It is a fairly decent game. I think for me this would be a 7 out of 10. Perfectly fine. I had a nice time with it. The difficulty, I think, was the main thing for me. That's why I stopped playing it for so long. I was starting to feel like playing it on normal was doing my head in. Playing it on easy took away the challenge, and so I felt like I was just going through the motions. And so neither experience fit me particularly well. But that doesn't take away from the visual achievement here. It doesn't take away from the fact that it's a first-time game from a new studio, and they've done pretty well. You know, this game has got some stature to it. It does seem to have resonated with gamers, and I'm interested to see what they do next. I'm interested to see what lessons Ember Labs learned from this one. And I would say that especially when it comes onto sale and it's available for, 15 quid or something, that would be a bargain for this game. I mean, I paid £30 for it, and I felt like that was a very fair price. I'm very happy that I played it, even despite the fact that I've got lots and lots of gripes with it, as I've just outlined in this review. I would say it's a solid game. It has some teething problems. It has a couple glaring flaws, but mostly it's just a very beautiful, well-presented debut game. I would really love it if this studio would cut loose creatively a little. I do feel that Kana is playing very, very safe. But perhaps that's what has made gamers like it and respond to it in the way that they have. For me, it was a little bit too generic to really float my boat, but it was certainly a fun weekend of gaming. That's Kana, Bridge of Spirits. So that's our episode. I hope you liked hearing about Kana, Bridge of Spirits. I think that for some people in the Discord community, this might help them out if they're thinking about buying this game. I think a lot of people that have a PS5 are looking for something to play on it. And I think Kana's, it's a good shout. It's a mid-price game. It's under 20 hours. It looks the part. And I think a lot of people would have fun with this game. I'll be back next week with a new show. I've been John. This has been Gaming in the Wild. If you would like to come and talk to me on social media, if you've played Kana Bridge of Spirits and you have thoughts about it, or any of the other games that I've mentioned this week, Eastshade, Psychonauts, any of those other games, you can find me on Twitter at Gaming in the Wild. I'm also on Twitch, Instagram, and YouTube. I really appreciate people who leave a review on Apple Podcasts and who share this podcast with friends that they think might like it, or on social media. All of that stuff is really helpful and very much appreciated. If you really want to show support and you've really enjoyed it and you've powered through to the end and you're still with me now, it's patreon.com/gaminginthewild if you'd like to join the club. Thanks very much for listening. I'll be back next week. Take care of yourselves and each other. Bye-bye for now.